Good morning. My name is Jennifer Ryan, and on behalf of the Alliance of Women in Workers' Compensation, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Today's webinar is titled Cultivating a Strong Corporate Culture with Industry Executive Leadership, will last approximately 1 hour and is a pre-recorded webinar from this year's WCI conference held in Orlando, Florida, being broadcasted today, Thursday, November 3rd, 2022. Before we get started, I would like to thank our 2022 corporate sponsors for their support on hosting events such as this. They support us not because they want their logos up on a screen, but they support the cause, which is to affect positive change in the workers' compensation industry through networking, support, mentoring, and collaboration. The Alliance is inclusive of all professionals in workers' compensation, regardless of career stage, with the belief that we can all learn from and support each other. Please be sure to head to the AWWC website for all upcoming events. This year, we have been able to host webinars, collaboration sessions, as well as in-person events. Be sure to check back on our website for registration details. If you cannot make one of our live, virtual, or in-person events, don't worry. Webinars and our main board-led events will be recorded and on demand for our followers. Our theme this year is Acknowledge, Adjust, Advance. Each quarter, our webinars and events will be centered around each mini theme. This quarter, we focus our topics around Elevate Together. Be sure to join in these discussions as we facilitate both virtual and in-person events. I'm excited to announce that next year's theme is Together Towards Tomorrow. Stay tuned for more information regarding 2023 content, virtual and in-person events coming soon. Have you joined a book club yet? This year, we launched our 2022 book club with 6 books to choose from previous keynote speakers the Alliance had at our events in 2021. If you love reading books, be sure to head to the AWWC website to sign up to join the club, as you still have time to join for this quarter. We will be announcing 2023 book club information next month. Did you know that the Alliance has grown in 2023? We have launched several new local chapters throughout the United States. Be sure to connect with your local ambassador on upcoming events. Change is preceded by trust. It is through acceptance and inclusion that trust will be formed and positive impact will occur. The Alliance is committed to creating a safe space in the workers' compensation industry for women of diverse backgrounds and experiences through a shared culture that integrates various perspectives. This is who we are and who we will be. The time to do better and be better is now. The Alliance understands that diversity is a journey that will take time to make meaningful changes for our organization, its followers, and supporters. We will be intentional in making progress along our key pillars of change. The culture of a company has remarkable impact on talent attraction and retention and business performance. Developing a talent strategy that is a magnet to purpose and performance is imperative for businesses. In a time when talent attraction and retention is a top priority, employers must do much more than bringing employees through the door. Our panel session will provide insights into workforce talent trends across the U.S. and programs people leaders are exploring with executive management. Successful CEO panelists in our industry will share how they are targeting investments designed to help employees better perform their work and improve engagement and work satisfaction. With hybrid work all the rage, how do leaders manage work from home and ensure you have an engaged, productive workforce? In today's labor market, many times we hear salaries are increasing. How do companies balance new hire pay with existing salaries for similar positions? We all strive to have a thriving company culture, and this panel offers you a high-level thinking session to gain insight, actions, and solutions for success. Today's panelists include Michelle Adams, Vice President of Risk Operations and Casualty Claims with Walmart, Danielle Lisenby, Chief Executive Officer for MedRisk, Stephanie McLeod, Chief Executive Officer with the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation, and Verna Alexander Rhodes, Senior Vice President of Workers' Compensation Claims with Liberty Mutual. Although this is a pre-recorded session, please feel free to add comments in the chat feature through the Zoom chat feature seen on your screen. We love seeing our followers engage throughout our session. Thank you for the time you are spending with us today, and we hope you enjoy this webinar.
So in case you're trying to figure out what my shirt says, it says women can do anything. I think we can all agree on that this morning. I was really inspired when I saw this, and I'm like, I have an event that I'm going to that I think would be the perfect one to wear that to. So hopefully I'll leave you with a little bit of inspiration, plus it's pretty comfortable. I'm super excited to help facilitate this conversation this morning. I have an incredible panel here that has joined me. For those of you who do not know me, Michelle Adams, I lead the Walmart Claim Services operation in Bentonville, Arkansas. I have been with Walmart for just over 2 years. Before that, I spent a little over 20 years with Walt Disney World Resort. Started out my career in workers' compensation, so being part of the Alliance and particularly part of this industry is very near and dear to my heart. As founding member of the Alliance, and it's so funny to think back to being in a meeting room so many years ago. Danielle, you were there. Kimberly, you were there. I'm sure there's others in the room. And we all just got together as thought partners and said, what can we do to bring more women into our industry and to elevate women? At the time, and it's probably fair to say today, but not to the degree that it was then. It was a lot of blue suits at the higher levels in our industry. A lot of women who were at the desk, but not necessarily in leadership roles. And that's part of the reason that we all got together and said we can do better. And it's not just something we should wait to happen. We all have to put our hearts and minds and muscle behind it and make it happen. And when I look at this audience now, I know that this is just one event of many, and not including all of the online content and all of the different conferences and meeting venues that happen throughout the year. The extent to which the Alliance has touched so many women and made them perhaps take a step into an unknown and do something that's different than they thought they were capable of is truly a point of pride. So I just want to thank the Alliance for that. And then for myself, I remember being on this stage 5 years ago, and it was the first time. I don't think it was our first event. I don't remember. Maybe it was at the WCI conference. We were trying to think about what are we going to talk about, and I said, well, I'll come talk. And I had just gone through and was in the midst of a pretty challenging medical crisis. And now, 5 years later, to be where I'm at the time when I didn't know what my future would even hold, and now today being up here on the stage with these wonderful women, it's just such a point of pride. So I just am so happy now, 5 years later, to be here, healthy, happy, and extremely focused on the future and thoroughly excited about the women that we're bringing into this organization and into our industry. So thank you all. I am going to allow each of our speakers to introduce themselves because I think I probably wouldn't do as much justice. So Stephanie, if you don't mind, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. Again, Stephanie McLeod. I'm with the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation. Started my career there as a staff attorney, and then ended up doing some more workers' comp when I was at the Attorney General's office as chief counsel. From there, I left 12 years. I was at Sedgwick, and then now I'm back as the administrator and CEO of the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation. I'm going to bring a different perspective. We're a governmental agency, cabinet level, to the governor, and we have some unique challenges with regard to pay, bargaining unit, among other things. So my story and my input will be just a little bit different.
Good morning. My name is Verna Alexander Rhodes, and I am probably a newbie considered in this industry because most of my background has been in personal lines. So I'm currently the Senior Vice President of Workers' Compensation for Liberty Mutual and the Helmsman TPA brand. But prior to my now 9 years of tenure at Liberty, I worked for Farmers Insurance and Allstate Insurance. So when you talk about bringing a different perspective, I certainly do. Now, I will caution everyone here about networking because I met Michelle through our WCRI board membership and somehow landed an invitation here. So be careful who you network with because you never know what that's going to bring. But I'm very excited to be part of the panel today. Thank you,
Great,
Michelle.
thank you.
Michelle is good like that, and so is Kimberly George, by the way. Anyways, I am Danielle Lisenby. I think I'm the seasoned one here, so I'm feeling a little bit old. So I've been in the industry for almost 30 years. The last 2 years, almost 2 years, been the CEO, president of MedRisk. Prior to that, I was the CEO of Broadspire for 9 years, but been in the industry. I'm one of those, and I don't know how many people in the room are one of these, that just kind of landed in the industry. I'm an industrial engineer by trade. I answered an ad for a supervisor position, and the gentleman said, listen, I can teach you this crazy world. Come on board. And here, 30 years later, I'm still here. But really what I'm the most proud of is being a founding board member of the Alliance. It's been an incredible journey. Who would have thought with, 12, 13 of us sitting in a room that we would be where we were 7 years ago with this concept and idea to having this vast audience sitting in the group and talking about different things that really help people. I've had the honor and pleasure to have folks help me along the way with my journey, and it's very, very important to me to pay it forward and pay back. So, and Kimberly knows that, and she takes advantage of that to get me involved in all kinds of good stuff. But excited to be here and excited to talk to you guys today.
Great, thank you so much. So, you know, the prevailing theme throughout the WCI conference from the kickoff on Monday through today has been about the battle for talent, talent retention, business impact of what we've all experienced together through the pandemic. And that's no different from what we want to talk with you all about today. And so I'm super excited to have our panel here. So I think I'm going to start, Stephanie, with you. I would love for you to talk about kind of where we are in a post-pandemic in your organization. What's been the impact on culture? What is life like now versus the way it was maybe 2 years ago?
Thank you. One of the things that I omitted from my resume was that during the pandemic, I actually spent 11 months as the director of health for the state of Ohio. So I was in charge of the vaccine rollout and all things pandemic. So there's a sore spot in my in my history on the pandemic, but I think a few notations post-pandemic. First of all, obviously the Great Resignation, the number of people we are seeing retiring, the number of people we will see leave. BWC, the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Comp, we are a hybrid. It's only 2 days in the office, 3 days at home. We are still seeing people leave for 5 days at home. Even though, as I've mentioned, we have pay restraints, but our benefits are phenomenal. When I started at Sedgwick, they said, we have great leave time, and they do. But I laughed and I said, I came from the state. This ought to be good. The state has wonderful leave benefits. But the struggle for talent, and I have yet to really put my finger, and I'm interested in the other panelists and others as well, as to where the Great Resignation comes from. I understand retirements, but people who have just decided not to work. I don't know if this comes from, if there's really an element of that during the pandemic, they tightened their belts and all of a sudden figured out they didn't need as much to live on, and therefore didn't need to work as much. With those employees that remain, I see a lot more of I and a lot less we. If I say it's good for the team to be together physically, they say, I don't want to come in the office. I like my work-life balance. I like being at home every day. And that has been from the lower levels all the way up to our executive team. And that was a surprise for me. Trying to bridge that gap, people became very focused on their own needs, their own wants, and how we could accommodate them. That's been a struggle, as everyone in this room, I'm sure, has dealt with. It's not unique to us. But it has completely changed how we do business and how we attract talent.
That's such an interesting perspective. If I were writing notes, I would be writing the shift from we to I, because I hadn't put that together. But you're absolutely right. The conversation has shifted. So Verna, how about you? I'd love to hear how things are different, the same, better, worse?
I would say yes, and there's a new dynamic that I just actually read about called quiet quitting, where people aren't actually leaving, but they're making decisions basically in isolation to not work as hard. They're deciding, I want this career, but at the same time, I'm not going to give that extra discretionary effort. I'm just quietly going to do the bare minimum, which also impacts, productivity, et cetera. What I've noticed, because we are completely employee choice, you could be 100% remote, you can come back into the office, or you can do it hybrid, and far more people signed up for the 100% at home option. So we are in the process of coming up with different ways to communicate, right? How do we have team environment while remote? How do we have these one-on-one kind of stay conversations? That's what we're having to stop the disruption of the churn. So absolutely some of the same things you're dealing with, which is why this culture piece is so important. People, I don't think, are actually leaving for another $1,000, $1,500. They're leaving because they haven't really bonded with the culture of the company because they were hired remotely. So we're trying to figure out, how do we bring our culture to you, even if you're not coming into the office? And that starts with leadership.
When I started with Walmart, I actually joined March 26, 2020. So 2 weeks after everybody was sent home. And I spent my first really 18 months working from home, new leader, new organization. And when I made the transition and relocated, I always said I had 2 onboarding experiences. I had the onboarding of being a remote employee, and then I had that onboarding experience of what was really pretty somewhat hybrid. We were kind of going in and out, where now I'm working pretty much 5 days a week from the office. And I never felt like I was really part of the company until I was able to be in person and meet people. And it's the piece that worries me, that I didn't have a true culture connection until I was in person. So are we really impacting culture? Danielle, would love to hear what you
I'd
say.
like to cue off of that. That's spot on. So I came into MedRisk as well in the middle of the pandemic, and the decision had already been made, everybody home, and the decision had been made that we were going to be, similar to you guys, employee choice, right? So you could be 100%, you could be hybrid, or you could be in the office, whichever you're most comfortable with. I would say 80 to 90% have chosen to stay home for that work-life balance. However, the flip side that I'm seeing is almost mental health oriented, of, loss of connection, not feeling a part of the company, the stress of, working in an isolated environment. And same as you, Michelle, until like that, I think it was within the first 6 months, I said, I'm going in the office, I want to have focus groups, I want to meet people, I'm more of a face-to-face person, this is driving me crazy. And it was interesting when we brought folks in just for that few days, how different, in a positive way, things lifted up. So to me, it's like this almost yin and yang, or both sides of your brains are competing against each other. You want the work-life balance of being at home, but you're missing that connection. So as leaders, I think our greatest challenge is, how do you bridge those two together? And that facilitates bringing your culture together, that facilitates bringing training, all that good stuff, employee engagement. And I think that's our greatest challenge as leaders, and finding the tools and the ways to make things happen. And you mentioned collaboration tools. I think that's going to be key if we're going to honor the work from home. I think we'll also have to look at things from a mental health day. So one thing we did last year, we'll probably do this year, is at the end of the year, about this time of year, just out of the blue, we give everybody a day. And it's for them personally to take a mental health day, do something for themselves between this time period, and just take a step back, breathe, and focus on you as a person.
No, that's wonderful. So we're at this point where we are all kind of working through this together. It's the number one topic. I mean, every time I'm with groups or, how are you handling return to work? What is your return to office policy? How are you managing through that? And my narrative typically is, it would just be easier to say no. Like, no is easy because then no is everybody and no is the answer. But when you start to have any kind of differentiation, or whether you give choice, or maybe it's based on level or role profile, how much flexibility you can have, then you get kind of the whataboutisms. You get the well, this group is connected, this one isn't. These people were in the room where it happened, and the others were on Zoom and weren't there for the before and after chatter. So it's really creating a dynamic that I would love to see where we're going to be 3 to 5 years from now. I just want to put the accelerator button on and get through it. But so as we think about the ways of working, Verna, I would love to know, so how about the impact of culture as you've navigated that? Are you creating intentional ways to bring people together? What are your thoughts?
So we're doing a few things. We are asking our teams to come in for what we call meaningful interaction, right? So it's not just show up 2 days. We'll say, come in, we're going to have a training, we're going to have a town hall, we're going to have communication. We've also added a cultural component to our onboarding. So we have our ERGs, and we have, I guess, almost like culture ambassadors that partner with our training teams and our onboarding specialists so that new hires get to know Liberty more than just as their job function. Here are all the things that we have to offer you. Because again, with the Great Resignation, people can go anywhere for a little more money. What makes us stand out? We're saying this culture piece is what's going to make you stay. And we found that to be true through our monthly employee engagement survey. We read through those comments monthly and we react to it. What do people need? What can we reasonably do? I won't say that it's stopped the churn, but I can see over the last few months where it's slowed down. So,
Stephanie, how about you? How are you thinking about culture with the different ways of working, and how do you bring that culture to life? I think it's interesting, I don't think about culture, but it's just as important, right?
It is, thank you. I am going out personally, our employee engagement survey, I wrote back to my HR director, I said, this is a tale of two agencies. There were quite a few individuals who said, this is great, I have everything I need, I feel informed, and another half that said, I have no idea what's going on, I have no idea what's what, I don't feel like I'm kept in the loop on anything. And I've been going out and meeting. We have meaningful, as Verna said, we have meaningful time together, and I'm going out personally and meeting with, we have 10 service offices and, of course, multiple departments in our headquarters, and meeting with all those departments, divisions, and service offices. And one of the things that I think is missing on us as leaders is the recognition that there is only so much we can do. And at a certain point, some of this falls on the employee. And that's one of the things I talked to them about. I said, the employee engagement survey tells me I'm getting information out there. I'm doing those things, but either maybe I have an issue with supervisors or mid-level managers getting things down, or it's the individuals taking the time to do those things. Prior to the pandemic, I was talking about building up culture in a pre-pandemic world, and there was a woman who was fully remote. She was a safety and hygiene expert out in the field, and she was a little, she was a little unhappy with some of the decisions I was making, and she said, well, I'm fully work from home. How do you plan to integrate me into the culture? And I said, well, I'm not coming to your house. I'm not bringing this meeting to your house. There's a certain amount of responsibility that you, as an individual who chooses to work remotely, when you get that privilege to work at home, you get the responsibility of making sure you are staying engaged, that you are participating, that there is no way, especially for someone who's fully remote, such as this woman I was speaking with, there is no way for me to make her engage. There just isn't. And I give the example, when my stepdaughter was 19, it was like when she explained to me that even though she was at home working a part-time job, that she was an adult. And of course, I laughed heartily. And I said, oh, honey, the calendar page is not what makes you an adult. Those things that we get to do, the drinking, the smoking, the staying out late, they let us do all of those so we can put up with the responsibilities. It is the responsibilities that make you an adult. So with the rights come the responsibilities. And as I talk with staff, I've impressed that on them. With the rights of working from home come the responsibilities on your part. We will do everything we can on our end. And we are looking for new ways to try to engage. And I'm traveling a lot more, trying to get out and meet with the team and doing a lot more phone calls, a lot more. But if they don't engage from their end, as I said, I can't go to their home. And if you're going to change culture, it's got to be two ways. And giving them that responsibility, I think as we turn from the we to the me, there's been a lot of, you need to engage me. And I have pushed back and say, no, I will reach out, but you have to come to me. The easiest thing to do to get people who are still upset that we're not fully remote, I said the easiest thing for me to do would be the difficult part of bringing everybody back to the office 5 days a week for about 6 months to a year, and then move remote. And then move to hybrid. It would have been the best thing ever once I had sustained the initial onslaught. But I think we're missing a little bit that effort to put responsibility back on the individuals.
I think that's a great perspective, and I love hearing that. And what I'll throw in there too is similar employee engagement, right? Get great feedback. It's around communication. I always say, of all the years we've done an employee engagement survey, no matter what organization you've been a part of, there's always an element of communication. Because I might like to be communicated in one way, Werner likes to be communicated in another way, and so you have to be very nimble on the way you do it and the tools you use. But also the other part I would think is two things that I think are highly important and that we've started to do. One was, I call it self-discovery, and we brought our leadership team in, about 50 people, brought them in. We did the Enneagram, if any of you know what that is, and it was really eye-opening for many of our leaders to understand who they were, how they operate, how they communicate, how they do things. And I thought it was a very pivotal point for us because we know we have to do things differently. And so when you know about yourself and how you do things and how your peers do things, you can better work with your people, like you said. And I love that perspective. It gives them the time to say, this is kind of how I operate. This is my expectations. Okay, when I'm communicating, I got to kind of think about this. Am I too demanding? Am I too this? And really open up that line of communication and set those expectations with the employees. But the other part I really want to throw in there, and I know I sound like a broken record because I have talked about this before, is this industry does a phenomenal job around technical training. The best technicians in the industry. And from a technical perspective, we probably are bar none the best compared to any other industry. What I feel we fail at is soft skill training. So when someone's a great adjuster or a great clinician, we promote them up, but we don't give them the soft skills and the tools to do these kind of things we're talking about. For some people, it comes naturally, and it just happens naturally, but not everybody. They may be great at that, but they're not great at that because no one has invested the time and energy in them on that side. So I think that's a pivotal point for all of us to take a step back and invest in our people on that side of the equation. And it sounds like you guys are doing that.
It's such a great point. I always say culture is the multiplier on engagement, right? That's the thing that you've got to have. But this is a group that's focused on women. And when I think about the Great Resignation, and we've all read about the impact, particularly to women of color, other groups that are less represented, just knowing that our numbers, just the numbers have gone down in terms of those talented employees and that they've exited. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, what are we doing or how can we accelerate and maybe bring them back? And Danielle, when you were talking earlier about the opportunities and moving into leadership, I've thought often about, do we have less people who are wanting to step up to be leaders? And Verna, you were speaking a little bit about the quiet quitting. I don't want to do any more than this amount. So we're kind of even setting a lower level and not maybe having those aspirational things because you know what? I don't want to work that hard. I don't have to work that hard. So I love your thoughts.
I can't overstate the importance of mentorship. whether it is through formal ERG programs, employee resource groups, or just because you see something in a woman in your organization. That one-on-one time is valuable. I know that I'm probably oversubscribed in mentees, but I keep doing it because you end up talking through not just work, but what is your home and life dynamic, and sharing some of my own story, right, about raising kids and trying to have this career. But the mentorship piece, I think, is turning into a lifeline for women and people of color, quite frankly. And organizations are going to have to be intentional if they're serious about their DEI. They will be intentional around their mentorship in order to keep those people engaged in a career and in your particular organization.
I want to cue off that. So where I think not just mentorship, I think sponsorship, right? So I think sponsorship is just as important, and especially us as women leaders that are coming up the ranks and the allies and the men in the room, I do think we have an obligation, and when we have a seat at the table, of the decision-making table, to pay it forward or use our emotional equity and our emotional stance in that room to support those and bring folks up through the ranks. Now, don't get me wrong. The employee has to do their part, right? They have to demonstrate that they're ready. They have to demonstrate that they can do it, all that good stuff. But when they have proven their worth, I feel it's our responsibility when we, as leaders, have a decision. We're at that table for the decision-making power. We have that power to embed that power and bring people up and bring those people through.
I've always said the most important conversations that happen regarding you and your career happen when you're not in the room. And you're so right. The sponsorship is just, you actually did a really great write-up on sponsorship on LinkedIn, so I'm going to put a plug on that. It was really impactful, but it's true because, we have a duty to bring people up. It was one of my observations. I was having a conversation on the way in this morning, and I said, we just don't have as many coming into the pipeline. And if you were at the industry keynote, Mike, who was on the panel with me from Gallagher Bassett, he said, we don't need to compete over 10 people. We need 2,000 people so then we can all have our pick of who's coming into the industry. And I think that's true now as well. Stephanie, are you guys, in terms of talent and competing for talent, what's happening?
Same as I mentioned, we have additional restrictions on us. We have a fair number of our employees are bargaining unit, pay is set by contract. I cannot just look at a highly qualified individual and say, I'm going to pay more. Culture then becomes extremely important, especially at our executive levels. And hiring people, and it's really become, we have a strong executive and senior team, and a lot of it has just become, some of our best people have come in through them by reaching out and talking about the culture to people that they know in the industry who are qualified and would fit in the culture. We focus a lot in hiring, and as we have even people step up in kind of an interim for some of the senior team jobs, I work a lot with the rest of the senior team on how do you think they're fitting in, what are we doing, how are things going with this person, because the culture is so important when you can't compete on salary, among other things, and we aren't allowing fully remote. But people are still, fortunately, people are still coming in under the, and saying, I want to work on this team. Not that I want to work in this industry or for this organization. I want to work on this team. And that's where we're focusing.
One of the things that we've all become fully aware of is how world events, socio-political, economic, all of those things are actually coming more into the workplace. And people are making decisions about where they work and who they work for based on perhaps a company's position on different events. I know with the Dobbs decision, there were a lot of employers who came out and said, this is how we're going to address this. And these are conversations that we were not having in the workplace before, and now we are. We're having to have these conversations. I know, my organization operates in all 50 states, and we want all points of views, all people to feel welcome in our stores, clubs, marketplaces. But that's also true of our employees. We want to know that we are open to all perspectives and all points of views. And I'd love to hear, Stephanie, I don't know if this has impacted you as much, maybe Verna or Danielle, if you'd comment on how these types of challenges and have shaped the way that you have to show up as a leader.
So a few things. I've been very proud over the last few years of Liberty CEO, the way that he has leaned in every instance, whether it was the George Floyd murder or the attacks on the Asian Pacific community, all the way up through the recent Roe decision. So he'll put out a statement and talk about how Liberty is in support of our employees and our communities. As a leader, I then have felt the obligation to have a candid conversation about how I feel. People want to know where you stand. Doesn't mean that they necessarily agree with you all the time, but you've got to show up as a principled human and open to listen to their perspectives as well. I have open forums, if you will, for anyone who wants to come in and talk about anything that's going on in their community, in society, so that we just build more cultural awareness. Again, that's another reason to sort of make this employment opportunity one that's sticky, because they feel like I can bring my whole self to work. And we use that term a lot, but there's a lot of work that has to go into creating an environment where people will bring their whole self to work and then give you that discretionary effort that I want. I don't want the quiet quitting. I want whatever discretionary effort you're willing to give because you actually enjoy the experience of working on the team.
I'm going to use that term, discretionary effort. I love that.
It's phenomenal to hear what Liberty's doing, and I think that's spot on. I think it also comes with an education point, which sounds like that's what you're doing when you're having your conversation. So I would think it's important for the organization, not to be political, and you don't want to be political, right? You want everybody, like you said, to have their own points of views and be able to share their experiences or share their concerns. So I think opening that door from an education perspective and sharing information educationally, what's going on, I think it's important because you have a diverse group where this group might not understand the George Floyd situation, or this one might not understand Roe versus Wade. But I also think as an organization, you take a look at, are there any benefits within your organization that apply to the circumstance? So with the Roe versus Wade, that stuff going on, we took a step back and said, okay, let's take a hard look at our benefits. And is there any benefits that will support families, females, whatever the circumstance may be, for that uncomfortable situation or uncomfortable conversation or uncomfortable dynamic, and then open up the door for conversation to say, here's how we can help you.
Yeah, that's so great. And part of this is being open and having those conversations. I know at Walmart we've had listening sessions, and part of that is we want to make sure that we have all perspectives and points of view, and there's things that perhaps you wouldn't have thought about, or why does this personally affect me? And so when I come to work, I want to show up, I want to do my job, but this is weighing on me because part of my identity is who I work for and how they respond and how they engage. So let's think about the balance. One of the things that I think over the last year, that phrase that's really become much more prevalent is psychological safety, and creating an environment where we feel like we can take risks, we can fail, we can fail forward, learn and move forward. As you have now come through this pandemic and we're really trying to accelerate, not lose momentum and push the business forward, how are you thinking about balancing those demands and making sure that you're a risk-taking and engaged and innovative employer? Stephanie, I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. It obviously comes from the top, whether or not, if your boss isn't willing to take risk, you certainly aren't willing to take risk. Fortunately, the governor in the state of Ohio likes to, as he would say, throw long passes and plant trees. when you deal in a world of politics, every 4 years things can change, and based on the decisions you make today may depend on whether or not you get reelected. And he's decided we're going to throw long passes, we're going to plant trees that we may not fully see the benefit of. That has allowed us to, I hired my first year in, the Bureau had never hired a chief of strategy, who I also stole from Sedgwick, hired a chief of strategy. And we have tried to take on some of those bolder for state government, bolder initiatives to try new things. But sadly, we're getting back to them. During the pandemic, all attention is diverted. Everything focused, we've talked about mental health issues, and the focus has been diverted in many ways. The pandemic is not just about COVID and vaccines, but all the things that come with that. And it has obviously been life-changing for us. So trying to get back to those, our culture has changed of, oh yeah, we had a lot of stuff on our agenda to do, and we're behind on all of it. And our list of things, whether it be IT initiatives or our list of things, a lot of the stuff's still the same as it was in 2019. And how do we get back? So I've challenged my team to what I call clear the queue. We have 80-some projects, some of which were on when I came in 2019. And I said, we're going to put all of our resources up. We're not putting new projects and new initiatives on because we can't get through the ones we have, partially because of the pandemic, but partially because we're state government. So I've challenged my senior team because as you know, IT is not just IT work. It's a huge lift for the business units to do new initiatives and new proposals. So we're trying to clear the queue, but I think in a post-pandemic, and let's all hope we are fully post-pandemic, I think we are, but it is trying to get back to where we were, and that mindset is the first step.
Yeah, I would cue off the mindset. I feel like we have been hanging on for 2-3 years, right? Everyone's just like, hang on, we'll get through this, we get through this. And not that everyone was stagnant, but it almost felt stagnant because you were just very focused on your employees and holding on and keeping everyone safe and keeping everyone healthy, and that's a focus. So it's almost a big step back. I would cue up it as two things. We've really got to go back into active listening mode, whether it's active listening with our employees. I mean, they're on the front lines. They see it, they hear it, they know it. They have the great ideas as well. It's our clients, listening to what's going on in their world, making sure we're aligned with them, and then taking that step back and realigning your organization to forge forward. So it's really, and then it's almost like I feel like I'm going back to my cheerleader days. Yes, unfortunately, I was a cheerleader. And that's really getting everyone just pumped up. Okay, it's over. Let's go. Let's move forward. Let's really get things going. I hear what you're saying. These are the things we need to do. Let's focus. Like you said, it's really easy to come up with, oh my gosh, we have 100 things that we want to accomplish. Let's pick the top 5, focus, be execution focused, and make things happen. And then the biggest thing, reward and embrace your employees that are a part of that journey, that are making things happen.
So I did not have the benefit of slowing down a little bit because as all this disruption was happening, COVID volumes from workers' comp claims were flying in. Yeah. So what I said is out of desperation sometimes comes a lot of innovation. Absolutely. And like Stephanie, I hired a chief of staff because I needed someone to drive new initiatives. So we revamped the way we train. We started putting out different initiatives and processes on how to handle claims. Like all of that was going on during this disruptive time, but it has turned out to benefit us, right? So now as we're coming out, we're like, okay, we're coming out with new people, new processes, some new technologies. It has worked out and some hasn't. So we took some risks. They didn't work out, but we did it quickly because this has been probably one of the most challenging environments I've ever worked in throughout my almost 30-year careers.
I completely agree. My favorite saying is never waste a crisis. And it's, that's the time that you actually can really lean in on innovation. For our, at Walmart, we had the same kind of boomerang effect that immediate decline and then a big increase, relative to what we were expecting, particularly as the company went into new businesses with delivery. I mean, everybody was having their groceries delivered to them. So, wow, think about the number of unexpected volume of claims that would generate just because that's a new business. I've had a couple of conversations with individuals at work who said, I went home, I came back to the office, and on my whiteboard had all our plans from 2020, and I can't believe I thought that was like the most important thing. It's like a moment in time has frozen, and then you say, look at what we've grown through and what we've learned in that time period. But I think that as we think about where we've gone, where we are, and how we have had to say, we're going to have to reprioritize what we're doing. And this might not be the right choice, but we're all going to kind of go arm in arm and move forward. The other point, just drawing on some of the comments that were made, we've got to take a moment and acknowledge what we've done. We had a wonderful town hall this past Friday where we actually had everybody in person that was local to our office. We had, I think, probably around 400 people in the room, maybe a little bit more. But what was really important for me was to show them our 5-year plan and where we were in 2020, how much we've accomplished, and how much we still have yet to do. And I think that motivates, or at least it helps everybody see, you know what, I haven't just been rowing the boat and not moving. We've been moving, and we're gaining momentum. So love that. Verna, you started kind of going there, but I'd really love to know kind of what have been some aha moments for you, any gains that were made. How have you changed over the last couple of years?
How have we changed? So one is, I won't even call it an aha moment. What I would say, going back to the culture conversation, is that I've always known that as a leader does, right, that's what gets created. And I have encouraged my team to lean into storytelling, right, as a way to, I guess, gain some relationship building with their teams who have been removed. And that's been tremendous for us, even from a work productivity standpoint, because people look and go, all right, that's how Sue or Verna or Joe, that's how their careers have been built. They've failed, they've taken risks. I can do that too. I like this environment. So there's been a lot of communications going out that way. Storytelling, town halls, open forums, just connecting. We have to do that before we could roll out initiatives, change training, do anything else, because people were just tapping out. So the aha moment for me has been, as much as I don't like to do it, self-disclosure, being a little more human, being a little more open and transparent about myself, and modeling that for my team has helped to build the culture that we're seeing now come through.
Yeah, having that vulnerability, that I think it makes people feel that you are human and you're not just a leader in a title.
Yeah, I would say spot on. I'm right there with you, the whole vulnerability and kind of putting it out there. For me, the aha moment is really taking a step back, and I would categorize it almost as being creative and allowing your team to be creative, right? Knowing that what might work or you think works for you or works for them, and just being creative. Simple things, like some teams, it's that Friday, 5 o'clock get together on Zoom or Teams and learning about each other and laughing and joking about the week, where in the other group it may be something a little more formal. And so just creativity, being a lot more creative and having to be creative because the circumstances have changed so much further, where before, we kind of knew, blah, 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 that path. And it's just taking the step back and being far, far more creative and leaning into what's important to you and your team and how they act.
I would echo both of what they said, and kind of to combine those, you're making yourself vulnerable. I was surprised, especially as we went into the pandemic, an aha moment for me was how many people just they didn't need a formal, we've got production, we've got we can do kind of commercial grade videos out to. A lot of times during the pandemic, I would just be in my office and turn on my iPhone and just record a quick message. My office was a mess. I probably looked very haggard, but I was exhausted, but recorded a message just thanking them for all their work, making sure that, I support them and that we're kind of together on this. And the feedback I got from those messages was incredible. And it wasn't any sort of formal production. It was just a human touch base. Okay, she's tired too, but she's, we're there, we're working, we're together. And, the risk moments, what I tell my team is, your best batters in baseball bat 300. They're outstanding if they're batting 300, which means out of 100 times up to bat, 70 of them were failures. But if you knew which 30, you'd only get up those 30, right? You'd bat 1,000. But so you have to get up 100 times, and you have to be willing to fail more than you succeed. And those were just some of the things we picked up.
I'm going to use that. You guys have just, I feel like, I'm glad you all are joining me, but I feel like this is just like a private session for me because it's been just such a great conversation. So I'd love to hear from each of you, just your thoughts on anything that we haven't necessarily covered today, or, as we think about culture and where we're going, particularly for women, for everyone in the workforce, but, obviously this is the Alliance is focused on bringing up women. Your thoughts on sponsorship were so spot on, Danielle. What else can we be doing? What as individuals, as leaders, and as just, people who are engaged and interested, what can we do better?
So if you think of all the things we talked about, you could probably sum it up around the word change management, right? We've gone through a lot of change. There's still a lot of change to come. There's a lot of change because of the things we want to do. So no matter how you look at it, it's all around change. So I think one of the most important things that we need to think about as a leader is change management fatigue. We've been through a lot. People are tired. So how do you get folks through that change management and get them remotivated, re-engaged? We're seeing pieces of parts and everyone's moving in the right direction, but we've been through a lot since March 12th, 2020, right? So we're coming up on 3 years, guys. So it's just keep that focus on that and the people and helping them manage through that. And we'll all come out on top by doing that.
I think what I want to say specifically to women who are either emerging leaders or early career leaders, something Danielle said earlier is that in our industry, generally we start to promote people due to their technical skill, but what we all know now is that your emotional intelligence is just as important. That is an area where women tend to fare very well. So what I want to encourage emerging leaders and newer leaders, lean into your emotional intelligence. Use that strength to differentiate yourself in your leadership track. I would argue that it's harder to teach those skills than it is technical.
100% agree.
Right. So don't be afraid to raise your hand and say, look, I'm a good relationship builder, I'm a good team builder, I'm empathetic. I think that, situates me well for a leadership role, and you can learn the technical piece later. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think you can surround yourself with the technicians, right? I want to have people who work for me that are smarter than me.
Agree 100%.
Yeah.
Agree.
I would, again, concur with my colleagues. I've said that too. I can't teach, you can't teach common sense. I can't teach wanting to be part of a team. I can teach subject matter. So finding those individuals and then sponsoring them, mentoring them, and also instilling in them. I have my chief of operating officer has worked her way up through the organization. She's dynamic. She's incredible. She's our first COO that's a woman of color. And as I've been meeting with her, I know that I'm not permanent in my job. I'm political. It changes over. But I stunned her one day when I said to her, there is no way under a next administration that you are not on the short list for my job. And she was absolutely taken aback. And I said, you need to think about this and start thinking this way. And so as I work with her and we do things, we'll have a lot of discussions about essentially, if you're in my job, if you're the CEO, think about it from this perspective or that one. But, you know, obviously she knows I don't make that decision, but having her thinking about, okay, I've got all the credentials and bona fides. What are the soft skills that I need to be working through to make, not just make the short list, but make the cut?
I love that. I've had a couple of those types of conversations over the years throughout my career. One of my favorite conversations that I ever had with somebody, and she's a leader in the organization where she works now. We were sitting across from each other. I was her supervisor. She was my direct report. And I said, why aren't our seats reversed? Like, there's absolutely no reason that you shouldn't be sitting in this seat. And she said, you're the first person who's ever really said that to me. I've never given myself permission to consider that was a possibility. And we need to be having those exact types of conversations. And there was another recently, really just so pleased to have some significant internal promotions at Walmart. And I was talking with another leader on my team, and I was saying, you know, I'm just so happy with these promotions. They're just doing so great. And it's a gentleman that works on my team, and he said, she has no idea how good she is. And I said, we need to do a better job of helping her see that then. I mean, that's also on her, but it's also on us because, I mean, the skill has always been there. The talent has always been there. It was talent plus opportunity. And now that there's opportunity, I'm just so incredibly proud. I mean, it just fills me with such pride.
That's the sponsorship. We're at the table, and it's really bringing those folks into the fold.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Yeah. So I think we're going to transition to a little bit of Q&A. Julie, I don't know if that's you, but I wanted to, you have a wonderful panel here. This is a great opportunity to ask some questions. And obviously, if it's something we don't feel comfortable answering, we'll just give you an answer, non-answer.
Raise your hand, or you can stand up.
Good morning. Thank you for speaking with us. My name is Nikki, and I just have a question about the employee engagement survey that you mentioned earlier. Verna, I heard you say that you're conducting those every 30 days. From the others, I'm wondering about frequency and your strategy to encourage participation and your participation rates.
We try to do ours a large one annually. I don't know how large Verna's is, and I'll let her speak to that. So we do more of a larger engagement on an annual basis. However, it's the cues that come after that. So the feedback goes to the departments. They actually go through it with the managers and the other folks and really develop a plan specific to that work group. Because in the employee engagement, what works maybe for the IT guys, you know, and gals may not work for what's sitting over in operation and so. So we really then want to drill in more specific to within the groups of what's important to them and what they want to work on. So we then basically empower that frontline leadership team to make decisions on what's important for them and their staff and their work groups, and then have a monthly, quarterly kind of roundtable of what's going on and report out. And so we try to do it on an annual basis, though I love what she said about a monthly, so I might have to steal her idea.
So our monthly survey is a net promoter score, right? It's just 2 questions. Would you recommend your friends or family to work for Liberty? Sort of like a customer where you say, hey, would you recommend purchase? And then the question around being inspired. And initially I thought, monthly, this is crazy, but you can immediately see the impact of a communication that went out, a change in a process or leader, and it's across all of Liberty. So every department, every org, down to frontline supervisors get an employee net promoter score, and it has made a big difference for us, especially during the pandemic, because we get to see how people are reacting and how this remote work is or isn't working for them. And our participation rate in comp right now is about 75%.
That's good.
When I came in, I think our employee engagement surveys were a little bit more perfunctory. It was just something that they did. We do it annually. Occasionally, based on certain issues, we will put out pulse surveys on issue-specific things and work those. And sometimes those are follow-ups of the employee engagement survey. Sometimes it's different altogether. I came in January of 2019. The employee engagement survey was underway. We had about a 45% participation rate. The next year, when I had been there almost a year at that point, we were starting, I did a couple things. The first one was begin on a regular basis to show my senior managers what their participation rate was for each of their divisions and gave them a little bit more invested interest. The second thing I did, we have about 1,700 employees. Roughly half of those are in the building that I'm in. So besides the regular emails and videos and requests, I took, we had signage up everywhere. It's time for the employee engagement survey. I literally took one of those sandwich boards and walked floor by floor, down every single aisle, floor by floor, reminding people that it was time for the employee engagement survey. I wish I could tell you how many people said to me, I wasn't going to fill it out, but if it's this important to you, I will do it. Since then, every year, we've been between a 90 and a 92% participation rate.
Yeah, we have an annual employee engagement survey, and it consists of the ENPS, and then certain reactions to company, to my leader, and then to me as an associate. I find the most value in the basically open verbatims where you can just pretty much write whatever you want. The first year that I was with Walmart, so I joined in March, we do ours right about this time, right towards the September timeframe. We had a really good response. I think it was in the 80s or 90s. And last year, it was also conducted at the same time, happened to also coincide with the timing of our vaccination mandate for home office employees, which I'm sure, everybody has very strong opinions one way or the other on that. So that drove some of the participation on that. But, I was really proud of the company for not shying away from doing our annual survey, even in the midst of when we know that was a somewhat emotionally charged time. It would be very easy for a company to say, you know what, there's just so much happening right now, this isn't a good time to do it. And I was super proud that we leaned in and said, we want to hear from you. And we really, it's voluntary, but I think what drives engagement in the survey, participation in the survey, is that you actually hold yourself accountable to action planning, giving feedback, sharing, being super transparent, opening that kimono and saying, this is who we are, warts and all, but then activating on it.
Yeah, I failed to answer your question on the participation part, and ours runs between about 86, 88 as well. But I think Stephanie's spot on. Even with that, it's almost internal marketing, right? That they understand you're listening. It's important. We want you to participate. We want to hear from you. So I think that component, no matter what your score is super, super important.
Back to, that was also showing, here's what you've said, here's what we've done. Or if we didn't do it, we may do it, but knowing that they were heard was a big deal. The other thing I pointed out when I got there in the 40s, as I went around and met with all my service office and team, I was like, do you really want me making decisions based on what less than half of you think? And that seemed to resonate as well.
Hi, ladies. I just wanted to introduce myself and say I appreciate you talking about the large corporate structure. However, there's a lot of smaller businesses out there too, so we don't run the same way you do. I had my employees remote for 20 years, and it's a self-motivating factor. You're saying I want to get them engaged. If they don't want to be engaged, they're not going to be engaged no matter what. Not everybody can work remote, so you need people in the office. Some people need structure, so putting them in a remote environment is never going to work for them because they need to come in. Other people, they're saying, hey, look, I got to drive in, and I lost 2 hours of work. I'm more productive now. And it's a self-discipline thing. But when you get into the layers, as these large corporations have, you're missing what counts sometimes, which is the people. They want that direct interaction with the president. I'm very hands-on with my company. Everybody that knows, hey, I can get a hold of Michelle and she'll get back to me within 24 hours or she'll have someone on it. And people want to feel appreciated. And I think that's why you're seeing this great resignation. Because what happened was you took what's going on and they made it political. And that's why you're having the great resignation. I really do believe that. And a lot of people were hanging on to retire, so they decided just to move on. So I'm just giving you my point of view from a smaller business, not the multi-billion-dollar, corporate structure. But I think it's something for you guys to look and to consider.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, but I think one of the things I would say is, I work for a company that employs 1.6 million people in the U.S., but I have a business in a business. I have my own P&L, and I have my own employees that work in my organization. And honestly, a claims shop in a retail environment, like I'm not an area that necessarily everybody thinks about. So we're a business in a business, and as we shifted to work from home, I mean, this was a complete culture shift for an entire organization, and we're all trying to come out of this and say, okay, what did we learn? What worked? What didn't? I think you make a beautiful point about the fact that small businesses are certainly impacted differently. I think if you've had a culture where hybrid work from the office or work remote entirely has been working for you, that's part of your culture. And what we've done is we've introduced a way of working that was different from our culture. And now we're trying to say, okay, now how do we move back into it? So thank you for your thoughts, though. I think it's points well taken.
I was also going to say, I agree with you about the personal touch. And sort of like Michelle said, like I have a 1,600 person organization, but at each leadership level, they need to do just what you're doing, be available to their teams, have that personal touch, because you're somebody who comes and joins Liberty Mutual, right, they're part of a big 50,000 person organization, but really they're on that team. And whether that team has 8 people or 20, we do want to make sure we have that personal touch. So thank you for your perspective.
Yeah, we tell all of our leaders, run your business like a small business owner.
I was just going to say that.
I mean,
Exactly.
you are a business owner, and you're responsible for your P&L, and it all rolls up to mine, and mine rolls up higher.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we even learn from the small business owners, because there is a quality there. We're a founder-owned business, and it's very family-oriented, and we never want to lose that component. And the biggest way to do that is to make sure the groups almost run it like their own little small business and keep that culture and keep that family orientation. So you're spot on, so thank you for your comments.
Anyone else have any questions?
All right. If not, I want to thank everybody, number one, for your attention and your participation this morning, but most of all, I want to thank my panel. I have had just a wonderful time learning from each one of you. I know that we now have a wonderful network, and I can tap each one of you to speak at different events in the future. So thank you for that. But no, it's truly a pleasure, and I really appreciate the Alliance for really, tackling interesting topics and bringing in diverse points of view. And I hope that you all are going to take away a couple of nuggets today that you can take back to your workplace. So thank you all for your attention.